When the fire broke out, my biological brother and adoptive sister were trapped together in the villa. I told the firefighters to rescue my biological brother first. However, my adoptive sister suffocated from inhaling too much smoke and did not survive. The next night, I was dragged into an alley by a group of thugs. They burned my skin with countless cigarette butts and forced me to swallow red-hot charcoal. My own brother stood in the shadows at the alley entrance the whole time, telling the thugs, "Don't burn her face, she still has to attend tomorrow's funeral." In unbearable agony and utter despair, I broke free from their restraints and smashed my head against the wall, dying on impact. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. Staring into the raging flames before me, I felt a moment of dizziness. Today was supposed to be my adoptive sister Mia James's birthday. A grand birthday party was held at home, caught up in the excitement. She ignored everyone's warnings and insisted on setting off fireworks indoors. Unexpectedly, the curtains and ribbons caught fire. In an instant, the flames spread rapidly. In her frantic attempt to escape, she accidentally locked the door, trapping herself completely in the master bedroom. Meanwhile, along with a group of people, discovered the fire and immediately evacuated, calling the fire department. But my brother Charles Smith couldn't wait for the rescue. Ignoring the raging fire and the objections of everyone, he forced his way upstairs, determined to save Mia James. Little did we know the fire was spreading too quickly. He hadn't even reached Mia James's room when he was struck by a collapsing ceiling, left stranded in the corridor just a wall away. In my previous life, I had taken into account that Charles Smith's condition was more critical. I instructed the firefighters to use the aerial ladder to enter the corridor and rescue him first, as he was severely injured. Meanwhile, my adoptive sister Mia James was screaming hysterically from sheer terror. She accidentally inhaled too much thick smoke, which led to pulmonary fibrosis and unfortunately passed away. Upon learning of her death, Charles Smith remained silent for a long time. I knew he was heartbroken, but I never expected that he would blame Mia James's death on me. He hates me to the bone, even hiring a group of thugs to torture me brutally. I clenched my fists. This time, I no longer want to care about blood ties or family bonds. Doesn't he just want me to save Mia James first, as he wished? Let's see if he can bear the price. Help, save me. In the master bathroom on the 3rd floor, Mia James was still screaming hysterically. Her face was completely blackened by the smoke, tears and sweat smeared all over it. "Stella Smith, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and get them to rescue Mia." Charles Smith was lying on the corridor, glaring at me with displeasure. His right arm was crushed beyond recognition, his face covered in dust and bloodstains. It looked utterly miserable, completely incapacitated, yet she was filled with worry for Mia James, who was in a situation several times better than her own. The firefighters laid out a safety air cushion on the ground and instructed Mia James to jump from the bathroom window. This also ensured sufficient equipment and personnel were available to rescue Charles Smith, who was trapped in the corridor. After all, the recent weather has been the peak season for fires in this city. The fire department is severely understaffed. However, Mia James was extremely dissatisfied with this plan. She began to unleash her drama queen instincts. She screamed, "This is the 3rd floor, you're actually telling me to jump. What if I get hurt?" The fire chief below said, "Jump with confidence. With the safety air cushion, you'll be fine." But Mia James simply wouldn't listen. She cautiously leaned her head out to look down, shuddered, and quickly pulled back. "I'm not jumping," she thought for a moment and then added, "Can't you send someone up to bring me down?" Faced with Mia James's continued refusal to cooperate, the fire chief grew anxious. I spoke up at the right moment. "Mia James, stop making a scene. The fire department is short on resources right now. If they all focus on you, who will save your brother?" I deliberately said this for Charles Smith to hear. He struggled to lift his head but still said firmly, "Save Mia first, I can hold on." He thought his selfless words would deeply move Mia James. Little did he know that Mia James simply walked up the steps without hesitation. She nodded in agreement. "Since Big Brother has already said so, what are you all still hesitating for? If it really comes down to it, just let Big Brother jump onto the air cushion, and you can come save me instead." Everyone present couldn't help but frown upon hearing such selfish words. Even Charles Smith's expression froze for a moment. The fire captain couldn't stand it any longer and scolded, "Your brother is already seriously injured and unable to move. Never mind whether he can even stand up. Having him jump down would only worsen his injuries, wouldn't it?" Mia James was yelled at, looking aggrieved. "But I'm still a weak woman. Aren't you worried I might get hurt?" Everyone was left speechless. They realized it was impossible to communicate with someone like that. At that moment, Charles Smith said impatiently, "Stop wasting time, rescue Mia first, then send someone to save me." He was already tormented by the pain and thick smoke, nearly losing his patience, but wasn't it the person he loved most who had been delaying the rescue progress all along? After a brief assessment, the fire captain said, "The woman is in the bathroom. As long as the door is closed and she covers her mouth and nose with a wet towel, she should be able to hold on for a while. However, the fire in the hallway is too intense, and there's a risk of collapse at any moment. Based on the current situation, the man is in greater danger. I said rescue Mia first." A hoarse voice continued to sound. "Mia is so delicate and fragile, how could she endure such hardship, seeing him so infatuated?" I sneered inwardly but pretended to be troubled on the surface. "But brother, you're badly injured." Charles Smith's face darkened, his gaze was as sharp as a knife, fixed intently on me. "Stella Smith, if you dare save me first, I swear I will never forgive you in this lifetime. I will make you wish you were dead." Those words pierced my heart like a sharp blade. That's exactly what he did in our previous life, with red-hot charcoal, with countless cigarette butts. Torture me in the most painful ways I can imagine. I lowered my head, hiding the hatred in my heart. "Don't worry, this lifetime will, of course, go as you wish." At the same time, Mia James's screams grew even more piercing. "What are you all hesitating for? I can barely breathe. Are my tax dollars just feeding you useless people? If I'm left with any scars, I'll sue you all. Besides, my brother is a man, strong and sturdy. What's wrong with holding on a little longer? He already said to save me first. What are you all waiting for?" Hearing her harsh words, Charles Smith's expression grew even darker, but he still tried his best to soothe her in a gentle tone. "Don't be afraid, Mia, I won't let anything happen to you." Then, he glared at me fiercely and commanded, "Hurry up and do as I say." I was waiting for those exact words. "All right then," I nodded, turned to the firefighters, and said, "Then please rescue my sister first." Charles Smith's expression visibly softened for a moment, but was quickly replaced by pain. A burning piece of the ceiling crashed onto his back. He grunted and collapsed onto the windowsill. "Hurry, move the aerial ladder to the master bedroom," the fire captain ordered. Mia James immediately changed her expression as she saw the firefighters approaching. "Quick, quick, I'm over here." She completely disregarded whether Charles Smith lived or died. Not even a trace of worry crossed her face, only the wild joy of her impending rescue. In truth, Mia James had always been very good at pretending, but at this moment when her life was at stake, she had no time to maintain her innocent persona. Charles Smith watched this scene, a barely noticeable flicker of disappointment passing through his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. With all his strength, he shouted to the rescue team, "Make sure she's safe." The firefighters set up a ladder to approach the window and handed a smoke mask to Mia James. Thanks to the mask, Mia James finally let out a long sigh of relief. Her nerves were no longer as tense as before. Just as the firefighter was about to secure her with the rope, she suddenly pulled half her body back inside. Mia James hesitated and said to the firefighter, "I left my pink diamond earrings on the dresser in the bedroom. I just bought them at last week's auction. Could you please get them for me?" The firefighter's eyes widened, clearly not expecting her to make such a request. The fire was growing fiercer, and the bathroom door was already beginning to char. She actually had the nerve to ask others to take even greater risks to enter the master bedroom, just to help her retrieve her jewelry. The firefighter's face flushed with anger. "What time do you think this is? You're still worried about that? Time waits for no one. There are still people waiting for us to rescue them." Meanwhile, Charles Smith's eyes were red and irritated from the thick smoke, and it looked like every second was pure agony, but Mia James refused to back down. "I'm not leaving unless you help me get the earring back." Her tone was filled with stubbornness. The fire captain scolded angrily, "Have you lost your mind? Every moment we delay puts your brother's life in greater danger. This is no time for your willfulness. Mia James is the daughter of Uncle James, the butler, and she grew up with us since childhood. When she was 10 years old, Uncle James passed away unexpectedly. My parents took pity on her and adopted her as their foster daughter. The Smith family devoted themselves to nurturing her, hoping she would achieve great things in the future, but Mia James never put her mind to her studies. She had extremely high material desires and often stirred up trouble outside. Relying on her status as a young lady of the Smith family, she only wanted to use the Smith family as a stepping stone to marry into an even wealthier family, to complete her class leap. Yet everyone in the upper-class circles was shrewd. calculating gains and losses with absolute clarity. She eagerly mingled among the wealthy heirs, only to be treated as nothing more than a clown. Finally, after repeated rejections, she gave up. Instead, she turned her sights on Charles Smith, who was with her day in and day out. I've always known what Mia James was thinking, but I never paid it any mind. I thought a woman like her, uneducated, vain, and shallow, could never catch Charles Smith's eye, no matter what, but it turns out I was wrong. Mia James had already captured his full attention through her subtle, unnoticed provocations. The fire continued to spread, the ceiling of the corridor was peeling away in sections, teetering on the brink of collapse as if it might give way completely at any moment. Charles Smith coughed up a large mouthful of blood, his eyes growing unfocused. The rescuers' hearts were in their throats. Only Mia James couldn't read the situation and continued to argue relentlessly with the rescue workers. My earrings are worth 800,000, more than your lives are worth, and you just say, forget about them. She stood with her hands on her hips, speaking in a sarcastic and mocking tone. The firefighter's face turned ashen as he forcibly strapped the safety harness onto her. She suddenly went crazy, twisting her body. Don't touch my dress. This is a Paris Fashion Week runway piece. Rip. The moment the hem of her dress was torn by the metal buckle, she actually raised her hand and grabbed at the firefighter's mask. You poor trash, can you even afford to pay for it? The latter shook violently, and the firefighter nearly fell. In this way, a rescue that should have been completed within 10 minutes was dragged out to nearly 30 minutes. Charles Smith heard everything that happened clearly. His expression was twitching and unpleasant. In the past, he had always seen Mia James's works as playful and full of independent thought, but he never expected that such independent thought would cost him his life. Charles Smith suddenly turned his gaze toward me, a trace of pleading actually visible in his eyes. Stella, I can't take it anymore, I sneered inwardly. Just a moment ago, you were using that threatening and commanding tone, telling me to save Mia James. Now, after suffering so much, you want me to change my mind. Is it possible? I will make him repay 1,000, 10,000 times over for the suffering I endured in my past life. He was certain I would feel heartache, because the one I cared about most was this so-called brother of mine. Even though I had always been the one showing warmth to his coldness, I never gave up my passion for him. That's why he felt secure and unscrupulously hurt me. I took a deep breath and advised understandingly, brother, Mia is throwing a tantrum and refuses to come down no matter what. Why don't you endure it a little longer? You don't want anything to happen to her, do you? Charles Smith gritted his teeth, a look of astonishment flashing in his eyes, and spoke with difficulty. Stella, are you really this heartless? Can you bear to watch me die? I put on a confused expression and deliberately raised my voice. Bro, what do you mean by that? Do you want the fire department to rescue you first? I'll go tell them. Everyone heard what I said, including Mia James. She suddenly stopped arguing and turned her gaze incredulously toward a certain direction. Brother Charles, what do you mean by this? Are you going to disregard my life and let the rescue team save you first? Charles Smith's expression was a sight to behold. He immediately retorted, no, I absolutely don't mean that. He sounded somewhat aggrieved. It's just, Mia, your brother can't hold on much longer. Those material possessions aren't important. Once we're both safe, I'll make it up to you. However, Mia James didn't care about his situation at all and said impatiently, can't you hold on a little longer? It's not about those things. I just can't stand the sight of these poor wretches daring to yell at me. The poor wretches naturally referred to the rescue workers. The firefighters' expressions darkened to the extreme. If it weren't for their sense of duty, they wouldn't want to deal with this foolish and malicious drama queen at all. Seeing this, I advised, now is not the time to argue. The situation with our brother is very dangerous. The beam is about to collapse, and he's covered in blood. He really can't hold on much longer. Don't be stubborn. Mia James has never liked me. Naturally, no matter what I say, she instinctively contradicts me. You think you can just say whatever you want. If he's really that weak, how does he still have the strength to speak? I remained silent. Charles Smith's expression was extremely weak. He opened his mouth as if wanting to say something more. The next moment, the beam broke with a crash. He couldn't dodge in time, and a steel bar pierced straight through his thigh. Charles Smith let out a miserable scream and fell into complete shock. In the end, the fire was extinguished. Both individuals were successfully rescued and sent to the hospital for treatment. Mia James didn't suffer too much harm, but she complained the entire time about her hair being singed, wondering how much treatment it would take to restore it. Charles Smith wasn't so fortunate. He was in critical care for a full week. His back and limbs were severely burned, accompanied by organ failure. At 1001 hashtag, he barely managed to keep his life, all thanks to the organ transplants. At the same time, his right arm and leg were left with permanent disabilities. He had limited mobility and would require lifelong medication and rehabilitation. When Charles Smith woke up, his face was as pale as death. It seems he simply couldn't accept himself like this. His respiratory tract was severely burned, to the point where he couldn't even open his mouth to speak. When he saw Mia James, he still managed to write a line on paper with great difficulty. "As long as you're okay." Mia James nodded perfunctorily. "Yeah, I'm fine." Then she immediately changed the subject. "By the way, what should I wear to the charity banquet next week?" "That necklace you promised to buy me." Charles Smith's eyes dimmed for a moment, but he quickly wrote, "I'll have my assistant buy it." Mia James's cold attitude toward Charles Smith was not without reason. The current Charles Smith is practically half crippled. Even Mia James began considering whether she should switch to a different target to pursue. Seeing the oppressive atmosphere in the hospital room, I smiled and said to Mia James, "This time you should properly thank Big Brother. When you set the house on fire and caused such a major blaze, he rushed in without hesitation and insisted they rescue you first." We were all deeply moved. Charles Smith closed his eyes, then tremblingly began writing again. "As long as she is safe, none of this matters." His deep affection did not earn him any guilt or gratitude from the other person. Instead, it made Mia James tremble all over as she understood the meaning behind my words. This matter started because of her. Charles Smith has become what he is today, and she is absolutely not free from responsibility. If her parents were to learn the whole story from beginning to end, they would definitely not let her off easily. They might even sever ties with her. Thinking of this, Mia James immediately tried to absolve herself of blame. "I did set the fire, but I never asked my brother to come in and save me. The fact that he ended up like this has nothing to do with me." Upon hearing this, the air seemed to freeze. Charles Smith looked up, staring at her with an incredulous gaze. He began to cough violently. I quickly interjected, "Mia, you can't say that. Big Brother ended up like this because he was trying to save you. Besides, if you hadn't been arguing with the firefighters, he probably wouldn't have gotten hurt." Mia James was instantly furious. This was an outright accusation that she was the one to blame. She retorted angrily, "What does that have to do with me? He was the one who charged in on his own. Don't you dare try to guilt-trip me." Then she turned her gaze to Charles Smith. "An unnatural mutter. Blame it on the fate that you were destined for this calamity. Even if it wasn't for saving me, it could have been because of something else." Such baseless, forced self-justification could be described as utterly shameless, but when it came from Mia James's mouth, I didn't find it the least bit surprising. I lowered my head to hide the smile at the corner of my lips. "Charles Smith, this is the person you're willing to die for?" I originally thought it was a pity the fire didn't manage to kill him, but now it seems physical pain can't compare to the agony of a broken heart, the taste of betrayal by someone you care about. He should get to experience that too, to make things fair. Sure enough, Charles Smith's eyes reddened. His eyes were filled with intense disappointment, grievance, and anger. Mia James felt a bit guilty. "You should rest well. What's done is done, so don't overthink it." After saying that, she didn't stay a moment longer and quickly left the hospital room. A week later, Mom and Dad rushed back from abroad. Upon hearing about Charles Smith, they nearly fainted from shock. Dad asked with deep anguish, "How could a fire break out for no reason? Why didn't Charles escape?" I answered truthfully, "Bro didn't fail to escape. He went back in to save someone else." Upon hearing this, both of my parents were utterly shocked. My mother sensed there was more to the story and pulled me aside, urging me to recount the entire incident from start to finish. When they learned that the fire had been started by Mia James, and because of Mia James' refusal to cooperate with the rescue, Charles Smith was severely injured and left disabled, they were absolutely furious. At this moment, the parents deeply regretted adopting Mia James. "That ungrateful wretch." The father, overwhelmed with rage, exclaimed, "We must have been blind back then, raising a wolf in our midst, bringing disaster upon the whole family." Mother wiped her tears. "From now on, she, Mia James, has nothing to do with the Smith family." I nodded, but inside I was laughing hysterically. It seems Mia James's good days have come to an end as well. Since our previous address was destroyed, our whole family moved to another villa. The living room was silent. Only the soft sobs of Mia James could be heard. "Mom, Dad, I didn't mean to. Please don't abandon me." She knelt by her mother's knees. Mother's face was cold and stern as she pushed her away in disgust. "Don't call us family. Your surname is James, not Smith. We don't have a daughter like you." Hearing this, Mia James cried even harder. "Are you abandoning me, leaving me to fend for myself, at a time like this?" She actually resorted to emotional blackmail. Her father snorted coldly. "Over the years we've raised you and provided for you, we've already gone above and beyond our duty. You're an adult now, so it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet, don't push your luck." With that, her father turned and left in a huff. Mia James was stunned for a long time. Clearly, her choice of words at the time was so clever that she completely absolved herself of any responsibility, because she also assumed that Charles Smith still had feelings for her and wouldn't say much. But her parents remained firm in their stance, unwilling to forgive her. The only possibility was, she suddenly raised her head and glared at me angrily. "It's you. Did you say something to Mom and Dad?" I was about to speak when Mother slammed her cheek down heavily. She shot a sharp glance at her. "What's wrong? You made a mistake, and now you won't allow Stella to tell us." Mia James turned pale, and her tone became timid again. "No, Stella has always been biased against me. I'm afraid she exaggerated everything to you, deliberately making you misunderstand me." Mother sneered. "Do you think we're all so old and confused that we wouldn't believe our own daughter, but instead trust a scheming ingrate like you?" Mia James clenched her teeth, a hint of ruthlessness flashing in her eyes. She had always resented how much more our parents favored me. She always has to compete with me over everything. If our parents showed me even a little more affection, she would throw a tantrum and complain to Charles Smith, and Charles Smith, completely taken in by her, always believed that I was using my status as a Smith family daughter to exclude her, bully her, and make her suffer a lot of grievances. As a result, Charles Smith never had a good look for me. My parents had no choice, and at the same time, they felt sorry for Mia James, who had no parents, so they always indulged her, but she never understood the situation. Even though she was just an adopted daughter, the Smith family provided her with a life of luxury. She was unsatisfied, yet insisted on competing with her own daughter over status and worth. She never missed a chance to scheme against me behind my back. One could say she was both foolish and wicked. My mother didn't want to look at her any longer and firmly asked her to leave once again. "I don't want to see you anymore. Get out of here." Just then, Charles Smith's voice came from the doorway. "Mom, Mia can't leave." Everyone turned to look. Charles Smith was seen sitting in a wheelchair, being pushed into the room by the crowd. Upon seeing him, Mia James seemed to have grasped a lifeline. Her eyes sparkled with joy. When Charles Smith approached me, he merely glanced at me with an extremely indifferent look. Then he came to Mia James's side. Mia James immediately threw herself at him. "Brother, can you please talk to Mom for me? I didn't mean to hurt you." Her tear-streaked face and pitiful appearance made it hard for anyone not to soften their heart. Mother frowned. "Charles, she's done this to you. There's no room for discussion on this matter." Charles Smith's expression remained calm, but his tone carried an undeniable authority. "Mia didn't do it on purpose. I've already forgiven her. Where will she go if you drive her away now?" Without giving it much thought, I knew. During Charles Smith's recovery period, Mia James once again won people over with sweet talk and flattery. As a result, Charles Smith was bound to shield her. Her mother trembled with rage and let out a heavy sigh. "You foolish creature, how can you still protect her after all the wrong she's done? Have you lost your mind?" Charles Smith was silent for a moment. "No matter what mistakes she has made, she is still my sister." Mother laughed in anger. "Sister? Stella is your sister. How much attention have you paid to her?" Charles Smith frowned and said somewhat irritably, "Stella has all of you doting on her, but what about Mia? She has no parents. If I don't protect her more, how much more injustice will she have to suffer in this family?" That statement was quite interesting. Who could possibly have wronged Mia James at the Smiths' house? Isn't that a veiled, or rather, blatant, accusation aimed at me? I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "Brother, what exactly did Mia James suffer at the Smiths' house that has given you such a strong prejudice against me? Why don't we clear the air right here in front of everyone?" Mia James shot me a fierce glare. Charles Smith's surprised gaze fell upon me. He seemed to think I had changed somehow. In the past, I was always the most obedient and gentle in front of him. I never talked back to him, and even went out of my way to please him. Now, my eyes are indifferent, not wallowing in sorrow over his slander. Instead, I exude an aura of confrontation. Charles Smith frowned, feeling inexplicably irritated, but if pressed to explain, he truly couldn't put it into words. Seeing him remain silent for so long, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "What's wrong? Weren't you just speaking so righteously? I'm quite curious. What exactly did Mia James do to you that you're defending her so fiercely? My words carried a meaningful tone, making everyone unable to help but speculate. Mia James' eyes reddened, and tears fell with a plop. She said pitifully, "Charles, forget it, I don't want you to be criticized because of me, I'll just leave." After saying this, she turned to leave. Charles Smith quickly called out to her, "Wait." Mia James stopped in her tracks. Two glistening teardrops streamed down her face, making her look especially pitiful. Charles Smith looked at Mia James and suddenly seemed to have made a decision. He turned to his mother and said firmly, "Mom, if you insist on driving her away, then I will leave the Smith family with her." Upon hearing this, his mother was shocked. "Are you crazy?" Charles Smith pressed his thin lips together, employing both soft and hard tactics. "Unless you agree to let Mia stay, I will renounce my status as the Smith family heir." Mia James had not expected him to say such a thing and was instantly overjoyed. Her mother was utterly exhausted. But after all these years in the business world, what kind of threats and temptations hasn't she experienced? How could she possibly be controlled by her own son? The mother looked at Charles Smith with eyes full of disappointment. "Are you going to abandon all your life's efforts for her? Have you thought about what you'll do in the future?" "Of course." Charles Smith tightened his grip on Mia James's hand and suddenly said with deep emotion, "As long as I'm with her, no difficulty is too great to overcome." A profound sweetness welled up in Mia James's eyes. Her mother snorted coldly and stopped looking at him. "Then go ahead, it's as if she had raised this son for nothing." Mia James actually had no desire to leave at all, but despite Charles Smith's forceful efforts, he couldn't change his mother's decision. She could only shoot me a glare and leave with Charles Smith in frustration. That evening, Charles Smith and Mia James posted on their social media feeds almost at the same time. Charles Smith's caption, "Betting the rest of my life, winning you is the only stake." Accompanying image, a picture of their hands clasped together. Mia James's caption, "From now on, we weather the storms together. Let's be brave one more time." Image, a picture of holding hands. I couldn't help but laugh. Mia James would never be in the same boat with him. Not to mention that Charles Smith is now in such a state that he needs her to take care of him. To show his determination, Charles Smith even voluntarily gave up the Smith family's black gold card. He only took a portion of the money he had earned himself. As for Mia James, not only was her card frozen, but even her once valuable jewelry was completely destroyed in that fire. With no money in her pocket, she couldn't hold out for long. Such an undisguised announcement spread throughout the circle within a couple of days. Mom and Dad grew even angrier, while also feeling humiliated. Dad shook his head and sighed. "He is no longer fit to take over Smith Co." Mother held my hand and said, "We don't only have him as our child, Stella is no less capable than her brother. She will do even better than Charles Smith." After Mother's reminder, Father turned his gaze back to me. He then asked me, "Stella, are you willing to try taking over the company?" My heart leaped with joy. These days, I've often comforted my mother when she was disheartened. At the same time, I hinted at my own abilities, so I said with a smile, "Mom and Dad, since you're willing to give me this opportunity, of course I'll do my best and won't let you down." My father and mother showed relieved smiles. It was the first time in so many days since Charles Smith ran away from home that the two of them showed genuine smiles. I knew that they were finally starting to take me seriously. After that, I naturally entered Smith Co. and began learning the management model of the Smith family. After staying at Smith Co. for a month, I gradually became familiar with the entire operation of the enterprise. During this time, Mia James frequently posted photos showing off their loving relationship on social media. Not only did they travel all over the world, but the jewelry gifts from Charles Smith never stopped coming. The mocking voices within their social circle gradually faded day by day. In fact, many socialites began leaving comments expressing envy for their relationship. Mia James's vanity was supremely satisfied. It was as if, at that moment, she was the happiest person in the world. But only I knew, if they kept spending like this, they would be penniless within a few months. Charles Smith has no ability to work and needs to go to the hospital regularly. As for Mia James, needless to say, she's a typical case of all outgoings and no income. I just need to wait for the right moment. I just didn't expect this day to come much sooner than I had anticipated. My phone rang. It was Mia James calling. As soon as I answered, a self-righteous voice came through. "Stella Smith, transfer $5 million to me. It must arrive in my account today." A cold smile curled at the corner of my lips as I feigned surprise and asked, "You've only enjoyed a few good days, and you've already run out of money?" Hearing my mocking words, Mia James felt somewhat humiliated. She gritted her teeth and said, "Stop the nonsense, transfer it quickly." I sneered. "What makes you think I would give it to you?" Mia James widened her eyes, growing anxious. "Have you forgotten that Brother Charles still needs money for his treatment? How dare you stand by and do nothing? Aren't you afraid of what Mom and Dad will think? Heh, then go ahead and tell them." I didn't care about Mia James's threat in the slightest and said lazily. Mia James was indeed left speechless and didn't say another word. I sneered inwardly. Of course, she wouldn't dare tell our parents. If our parents found out she had squandered all of Charles Smith's money, leaving him without even enough for medical treatment, then her last chance to return to the Smith family was gone. Mia James had never really considered cutting ties with the Smith family. She firmly believed that her parents would not abandon Charles Smith. They were just momentarily angry. Once their anger subsides, the Smith family, out of respect for Charles Smith, will surely take her back. Besides, she is in the prime of her youth. She has no intention of spending her life taking care of Charles Smith, a cripple. Mia James gritted her teeth and said, "Stella Smith, don't get too full of yourself. Mom and Dad are just angry for the moment. Once their anger cools down, the Smith family will still belong to Charles. When that time comes, you'll be left begging for scraps." After saying that, she angrily hung up the phone. I looked at the black screen of my phone and sneered inwardly. Mia James, how could I let this happen? Before my parents went abroad, they were always worried about Charles Smith, calling again, and making it clear that as long as Charles Smith was willing to break things off with Mia James, there would always be a place for him in the Smith family. But Charles Smith remained stubborn. He declared proudly, "Impossible, unless you accept Mia. Don't even think about me coming back." His parents were completely fed up with him and stopped caring about him, and my gossipy best friend told me that Charles Smith is already looking for a job. This news actually surprised me a bit. I couldn't help but ask, "Is he able to stand up now?" My best friend grinned mischievously. "Barely. He can hardly even walk, yet he's been humbling himself all over the place to submit resumes for Mia James. You know the outcome. No company dares to hire him." Charles Smith never expected that he, once the golden boy, would one day face so many setbacks everywhere he turned. His best friend continued, "After all, he's your own brother. Don't you feel sorry for him?" I flipped through the documents without even giving her a glance. Why should I feel sorry for him? He loves to bring trouble upon himself. Since he can endure this hardship, let him savor it to the fullest. What a joke! How could I possibly feel sorry for him? Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Compared to the suffering I've endured, what does any of this even amount to? There's still a long road ahead. It had been 3 months since I last saw Charles Smith. In the coffee shop, a little girl pointed at the barista behind the counter and timidly said, "Mom, this person is so scary." The girl's innocent voice clearly reached Charles Smith's ears. His hand paused while wiping a glass, and he discreetly tugged at his sleeves and collar. I looked up toward the bar. In just a few short months, Charles Smith had already fallen to working part-time at a coffee shop. He looked much thinner, his clothes were worn, and the expensive watch on his wrist was gone. There was no trace left of the spirited and confident man he once was. I heard it mentioned by chance. Charles Smith was originally employed at a company with promising prospects. He had outstanding professional skills and was highly regarded by his superiors. However, due to health issues, he frequently fainted, which not only severely affected his work but also frightened many clients. Moreover, Mia James was always advancing Charles Smith's salary from the company. The company simply couldn't tolerate it anymore and decided to fire him. After being fired, he moved from one company to another. Without exception, he was dismissed shortly after starting each job. Just then, a cup of coffee was splashed onto his face. Charles Smith froze, lifting his eyes to look at the other person. Those few people were looking at Charles Smith with ill intentions. He clearly recognized him. Well, if it isn't young Master Smith. Slumming it, are we?" Another person chimed in. "Are you stupid? Would anyone ruin themselves like this just for the experience? He cut ties with his family for a woman. What a hopeless romantic." Listening to the jeers of those people, Charles Smith furrowed his brows tightly and did not utter a word in rebuttal. These wealthy young men had long held a grudge against Charles Smith. After all, in the past, he had always outshone them in every way. Now that he had fallen on hard times, they naturally took the opportunity to mock him thoroughly. One of them said with a look of disdain, "I didn't believe it before. But it turns out to be true. For that bitch Mia James, he's actually willing to stoop to this level. He brought this upon himself." Upon hearing this, Charles Smith grabbed the man by the collar. his face dark and cold. "Who are you calling a bitch? Watch your mouth." Even though he had been badly betrayed by Mia James, Charles Smith still wouldn't allow anyone to slander his white moonlight. Charles Smith's actions angered the other person, who pushed him hard to the ground. The man straightened his collar and said loudly, "I'm talking about Mia James. You probably don't know this yet, but Mia James looks down on you for being disabled and unable to earn money. Who knows which CEO she's flirting with in his arms right now." As he spoke, he took out his phone and pulled up a photo. The photo showed a middle-aged bald man with his arm around Mia James's waist. Charles Smith's pupils suddenly contracted, a flicker of disbelief passing through his eyes. "You're talking nonsense." He could no longer restrain himself and struck out at the other person. The scene instantly descended into chaos, but he was no match for the several men. Realizing what was happening, the men beat him severely, leaving him curled up on the ground in pain. They spat fiercely in his direction and threw a wad of cash in his face, mocking him. They said, "This is several months' wages for you. No need to kowtow." With that, he left. Charles Smith's eyes were vacant, his chest heaving violently. It was unclear whether it was due to the pain, or because he had finally begun to question whether the person he had protected at the cost of his life was truly worth it. A long time passed, until someone called out to him. He struggled to get up from the ground. He clutched those banknotes tightly in his hand. One by one of the banknotes landed near my feet. Just as Charles Smith reached out his hand, he suddenly realized something and abruptly looked up. When his gaze met mine, he instantly flinched like a startled animal. He lowered his head and hastily walked away. He accidentally knocked over a coffee cup. The sound of the shattering cup echoed, much like his shattered pride. "Oh my God, how did the young master end up like this?" The assistant beside me couldn't help but cover her mouth and sigh. I remained expressionless. He brought it upon himself. After that, I didn't hear any news about Charles Smith and Mia James for a long time. And I myself was busy with the upcoming project. The days were fulfilling and beautiful. Another month passed, and a piece of news about Charles Smith quietly climbed to the top of the trending searches. A news story about a man who, suspected of his girlfriend cheating with multiple people, suffered a mental breakdown and stabbed her several times with a knife, landed on the front pages of various online platforms. My brow twitched, and I clicked in. Sure enough, in the video footage of the police arrest, I saw Charles Smith's face. Mia James ultimately died due to ineffective rescue efforts. Charles Smith was also sentenced to life imprisonment for manslaughter. The last time I went to visit the prison with my parents, Charles Smith refused to see anyone else but specifically asked to meet me alone. In the prison visiting room, Charles Smith sat on the other side of the glass. He was wearing a prison uniform, handcuffed, as if all vitality had left him. The former pride and dignity were completely gone, replaced by deep gauntness and exhaustion. "Stella, you've come." After a long while, his voice hoarse, he uttered these words. I have no expression on my face. "What do you want to see me for?" Seeing my indifferent demeanor, Charles Smith's expression becomes complicated. "Stella, do you still hate me?" My heart skips a beat, and a guess gradually surfaces in my mind. "What do you mean?" Charles Smith looked sorrowful, his eyes filled with guilt and regret. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have treated you that way." My heart raced wildly. "Did you regain your memory?" He smiled bitterly. "Yes." I take a deep breath. The agonizing torment from my past life still lingers in my mind. I hazily recall that moment when I was tortured nearly to the point of losing consciousness. Charles Smith's indifferent voice held not a trace of warmth. "Stella Smith, it's my fault for being too lenient with you. Now it's your turn to taste the bitterness of a living hell." The jeering voices of the thugs echoed in my ears. "Don't struggle. Your dear brother paid double to have us take care of you." My heart was shattered with grief and indignation. The memory ended. Seeing how guarded I was, a flicker of pain crossed Charles Smith's eyes. He said that he was just overwhelmed by Mia James's death at the time, which led him to do such a thing to me. He also said that he only wanted to teach me a lesson, but never expected that I would take my own life. It wasn't until the moment I slammed my head against the wall that he realized what he was actually doing. My mind went completely blank. Finally, unable to accept my death, he held my body and jumped into the sea. Only then was he reborn and returned. Yet in this life, he still chose the wrong path. One wrong step leads to another. At this point, Charles Smith could no longer maintain his usual composure. Crying like a child, he lifted his head, his eyes red-rimmed as he looked at me. "Stella, I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up directly and said to him, "If nothing unexpected happens, This will be the last time I come to see you. I hope you'll take good care of yourself." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving no room for Charles Smith. Charles Smith called my name from behind, but I had already started walking, leaving without hesitation. The sunlight was fierce as I stepped out of the prison. I squinted up at the sky. All the screams and blood, the love and hatred, the obsessions and attachments, were finally locked away behind the high walls at my back. I crushed a dry branch under my foot and strode into the sunlight, after hearing the first story above. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. At her husband's funeral, my sister-in-law discovered she was over 2 months pregnant. My parents desperately tried to persuade her to keep the baby, making all kinds of promises without hesitation. They offered her a monthly living allowance of 20,000 yuan alone, which finally swayed her. But she didn't know that my parents' combined monthly pension was only 2,000 yuan. They could never actually deliver on any of those promises. I couldn't bear to see my sister-in-law being deceived, so I told her the actual situation of our family, hoping she would think carefully before making a decision. The next day, she went to the hospital and had an abortion. Later, when my mother accidentally fell and got injured, we ran into my sister-in-law at the hospital and found out that her new husband had violent tendencies, and her life was miserable. Seeing me dressed in designer clothes, she became jealous and secretly told my parents that I had forced her to abort the child back then, and even claimed it was a boy. My parents believed it to be true and from then on held a grudge against me, thinking I was the reason their family line would be cut off when I had an asthma attack. My parents took away my phone and my medicine, leaving me to die in my room. They said I had to pay with my life for their grandson. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of my brother's funeral. One moment, I was struggling in the agony of suffocation, and the next, my breathing suddenly became smooth. Slowly, my unfocused gaze sharpened, and my vision was no longer empty. Instead, a coffin appeared, being slowly lowered into the grave. After looking around, I fixed my eyes on the name engraved on the tombstone, Leo Lewis, my brother's name. I finally realized that I had been reborn on the day of my brother's burial. I looked around and saw my sister-in-law Kathy on the verge of collapsing from tears, saw my parents' sorrowful faces, and the hatred erupting inside me was impossible to suppress. In my previous life, Kathy fainted from crying after my brother was buried. Everyone rushed her to the hospital, where the examination revealed that she was already over 2 months pregnant. My parents tried their best to persuade my sister-in-law to keep the baby, making all sorts of promises without a second thought. They painted such a rosy picture, even promising her a monthly allowance of 20,000 yuan just for living expenses. She was tempted, but she didn't know that my parents' combined monthly pension was only 2,000 yuan. There was no way they could deliver on any of those promises. I couldn't bear to see my sister-in-law being misled, so I told her the truth about our family's situation, hoping she would think carefully before making a decision. The next day, she went to the hospital and had an abortion. At the time, I still thought she had made a wise decision, that her life would be easier from then on. Little did I know, this was the early foreshadowing of my tragic death. Since fate has given me a chance to start over, I will never repeat the same mistakes. After all, it took losing my life in my previous existence to understand one truth: meddling in other people's business brings retribution. I waited quietly, waiting for Kathy to faint, waiting for what would happen next. Sure enough, before long, Kathy turned pale and fainted. Just like in my previous life, everyone quickly carried her into the car and arranged to send her to the hospital. But unlike in my previous life, I didn't follow them to the hospital. Instead, I quietly tugged at my parents and whispered to them, "Mom, Dad, I won't go to the hospital, you two go with them." Seeing the puzzled expressions on their faces, I lowered my voice and explained to them, "My sister-in-law fainted at my brother's funeral. If I go with her, the examination and medical fees will be a huge expense. Since she fainted at my brother's funeral, of course I would have to pay for it. Now that she's no longer part of our family, why should we spend those thousands of dollars? We could use it for so many other things. Mom, Dad, don't you agree?" My parents place great importance on money, and as soon as they heard me say this, they immediately chimed in, "Yes, yes, Megan, you're absolutely right. That little vixen Kathy is definitely going to remarry. We can't pay for this. Then maybe we shouldn't go either. What if they try to make us pay?" I quickly stopped them. "Mom, Dad, you have to go. With so many people watching, we become the talk of the town. People will say, the Lewises are terrible people, abandoning their daughter-in-law as soon as their son is gone. You go with her, and when you get there just say you don't know how to use mobile payments, I won't go along. So we save both face and dignity. Mom and Dad immediately agreed to my suggestion and went to the hospital with her. If they didn't go, what if Kathy found out she was pregnant and just had an abortion? How would the rest of the plan unfold then? After sending everyone away, I quickly returned to the car, trying to calm my excited and nervous emotions. Sitting in the car, I gasped for breath, thinking about what I should do to avoid repeating the same mistakes. In my previous life, I had also gone to the hospital. After the doctor confirmed that Kathy was pregnant, my parents cried tears of joy, bowing repeatedly to the sky. Heaven has eyes. The Bodhisattva blesses us. The Lewis family will have an heir. They cried and laughed in excitement, looking as if they were mad, ignoring the people around them as they spoke one after another. Old man, our son may be gone, but he's left an heir for our Lewis family. Yes, old woman, once our little golden grandchild is born, we must raise him well. Our little golden grandchild will be born in just over half a year. This time, we must be sure to invite a master to give him a proper name. Right. If you ask me, our son's name was just poorly chosen. Leo Lewis, only 2 words. The name is too short. Doesn't that mean a short lifespan? They were so immersed in the hope of welcoming a grandson that they completely failed to notice Kathy and her family's expressions turning sour. I couldn't stand my parents' behavior any longer and spoke up to stop them. Dad, Mom, isn't it too early to talk about this now? Everything should be based on sister-in-law's wishes. My parents squinted and thought for a moment before understanding what I meant. They flew into a rage, pointing at my nose and jumping up and down while scolding me. Megan Lewis, you little brat, what do you mean by that? What? Now that your brother just died, you're even looking down on the baby in your sister-in-law's womb. Your brother and your sister-in-law shared a bond stronger than gold. Your sister-in-law isn't an ungrateful wretch like you. How could she possibly not want this child? Do you think everyone is like you, heartless since you were little? This could be considered as blaming the locust while pointing at the mulberry tree. On the surface, they were scolding me, but the underlying message was that if Kathy didn't keep the child, she would be an ungrateful wretch. I sighed helplessly and cast an apologetic glance at Kathy and her parents. My parents still weren't satisfied and directly chased me away, saying that looking at me brought bad luck. After I left, they launched their offensive against Kathy. Kathy, ever since you married Leo Lewis, we've treated you as our own daughter. Now that Leo Lewis is gone, you can't possibly leave him without an heir, can you? One shouldn't be so ungrateful, Kathy. You know our family's situation now that Leo Lewis is gone. We old folks have lost our lifelong hope. Now our only hope lies in the child you're carrying. To protect this baby, we'd do anything, but if anyone dares harm our little golden grandson, we old folks will fight with our lives to make sure that person never knows peace for the rest of their days. My parents used both coaxing and threats, their words leaving no room for courtesy. Kathy's family of 3 were furious, and her parents directly started cursing at my parents. You 2 old fools, who are you trying to threaten? Our Kathy is still young, she has most of her life ahead of her. Just because your son died, does that mean our Kathy has to suffer for half her life? They wanted to drive my parents out too, but my parents just plopped down on the ground, slapping their thighs and shouting at the top of their lungs, "Oh my God, they're hitting us. My son just died, and now my in-laws are beating us. My daughter-in-law is just standing by and watching. Nobody's going to drive me away. I have a heart condition, I'm going to have an attack. I have to guard my little grandson. If I don't keep watch, you'll harm my precious golden grandson." They were throwing tantrums and causing a scene, and Kathy's family could do nothing about them, but Kathy's parents stood firm. They insisted the baby had to be taken care of, or it had to be aborted. Seeing how resolute they were, my parents realized threats and intimidation wouldn't work, so they switched to a softer approach. They showered Kathy with all kinds of fruits and pregnancy supplements as if they were free, apologized to their family. "I'm sorry, Leo Lewis's departure hit us too hard. That's why we momentarily lost our composure. Usually, we old folks aren't like this. I understand, you have concerns, worried about future hardships, about Kathy raising the child alone, and how remarriage would be a burden. But if Kathy is willing to have this child, we old folks are willing to spare no effort to support and ensure the livelihood of both mother and child." My parents began making promises one by one. "We'll give them 20,000 yuan per month for living expenses, hire a postpartum caregiver after the birth, have them stay at the best postpartum care center, and hire a nanny to take care of them after the postpartum period. We won't take a single penny of Leo Lewis's insurance compensation or his inheritance. we'll leave it all for the mother and child, and that big house we live in now will be left to the two of them in the future." Just like that, listening to my parents making one promise after another, Kathy was swayed. But Kathy wasn't foolish either. She knew to come to me personally to sound me out. "Megan, your brother has passed away, and I'm still carrying his child. Your parents want me to have the baby and have promised to leave all their assets to me and the child. You don't have any objections, do you?" I knew she wanted to ask whether I would compete with her and her daughter for the inheritance later, seeing the anticipation in Kathy's eyes, and as a woman myself, I couldn't bear to let her be fooled by my parents, so I told her the truth. "Sis, my parents' combined monthly pension is just over 2,000 yuan. What's there to fight over with such a small inheritance?" Kathy's expression shifted slightly, but she still pressed on, unwilling to give up. "And the house too. The house is in a great location and spacious. It's worth a lot of money. Mom and Dad said they'd leave it to us too as well." I said helplessly. "I bought the house, it's under my name, and I'm still paying off the mortgage. Do Mom and Dad even have a say in this?" Kathy's expression completely changed. I thought she had finally understood. The seemingly prosperous and comfortable life our family enjoyed was actually all earned by me, and had nothing to do with my parents at all. In the past, to protect my brother, my parents never let Kathy find out about this. The money they occasionally gave to my brother was actually what I had given to them as a token of my respect. That's why Kathy believed the promises they made. Unexpectedly, Kathy's flickering gaze fell on me again. "Megan, the child in my womb is your own nephew. If I give birth to him, would you be willing to support the two of us in the future?" I nearly spat out my coffee. "If the child is born and life is tough, I might not stand by and do nothing, but where did you get the nerve to come straight to me looking to leech off me?" I looked at the greed in Kathy's eyes and sneered. "Sis, are you having a baby or a meal ticket? Even if you give birth to a meal ticket, it only works on my brother. Sending a red envelope during the holidays and occasionally buying some gifts, that's about the extent of my responsibility as an aunt, right? If you want to have a child, you must be prepared to endure hardship. If you plan to have the child and then dump it on me, you might as well not have it at all." Seeing my firm stance, Kathy went straight to the hospital and had the pregnancy terminated. To prevent my parents from causing trouble, her whole family deliberately avoided us. When my parents found out, they wept and wailed, cursing Kathy for cutting off the Lewis family line. They told me to contact a lawyer to divide my brother's insurance compensation and inheritance. "Let's just divide it as it should be. Anyway, Kathy gets the larger share, and my parents get the smaller one." When my brother bought his house, he borrowed 500,000 from me. I still have the IOU, but I didn't ask for the money back, especially since Kathy lost a child because of my brother. Whenever my parents remember, they curse a bit. "That little vixen Kathy, she's going to leave our Lewis family without an heir. She'll get what's coming to her. Evil deeds never go unpunished." I pretended not to hear any of it. After that, we never saw Kathy again, until many years later, when my mother accidentally broke her leg and the hospital was so crowded she had to be put in a general ward. In the hospital room, I saw Kathy again. Upon learning that she had been beaten and hospitalized by her current husband, my mother immediately became smug and said harshly, "Serves you right, you killed my little grandson, this is your retribution." Moreover, my mother always deliberately flaunted how well we're living now in front of Kathy, contrasting it with how miserable Kathy's current life is. TSK TSK TSK. If only my little golden grandson had been properly born back then, wouldn't life be much better than what you have now? Look at my daughter, covered in designer brands, and then look at you, so slovenly, you don't even look like a proper person." Finally, the jealousy and resentment in Kathy's eyes grew stronger and stronger, and she started twisting the truth to my mom. "Mom, it was Megan Lewis who made me abort the child back then. It was a boy. She came to me saying you had no money, and if I gave birth to the child, you would definitely force her to pay for its upbringing. But her money is reserved for her own children, not for someone else's child, so she forced me to abort Leo Lewis's son, your grandson." Kathy cried her heart out. My mother took her words to heart and held a grudge against me from then on, though I was unaware of it. After my brother passed away, I had been living with my parents. When my asthma flared up, I couldn't find the asthma medication that was usually within easy reach. I turned to my parents for help, but my father came over, took my phone, locked the doors and windows, and shut me in my room. Confused and struggling against the overwhelming feeling of suffocation, I asked them why. From outside the door, my mother's icy, hate-filled voice rang out, "Megan Lewis, you heartless creature, to protect your filthy money, you would disregard your own brother's flesh and blood and force your sister-in-law to have an abortion. Are you worthy of your brother? You've cut off the Lewis family line. Are you worthy of us? Now it's time for you to pay with your life for your nephew. Go apologize to your brother in the underworld. My throat swelled, the suffocating feeling growing stronger. I couldn't utter a single word. Using all my weak strength to pound on the door, I stared fixedly at the doorknob, desperately hoping someone would push the door open and give me a chance at life. Unfortunately, until my vision blurred and there was nothing in sight, the doorknob never turned even a little, just like that. I was killed by Kathy and my own family, dead and gone, but heaven actually brought me back to today. The phone rang, the memories in my mind slowly faded, and I pressed the answer button. Megan, thank heavens, your sister-in-law is pregnant. I curled my lips, my voice trembling. Really, this is the only hope for our Lewis family now. We must make sure she carries the baby to term. The debt you owe me from our past life, I'll collect it with interest, just like in my previous life. My parents made a bunch of promises, and Kathy came to verify them with me again. We still met at a coffee shop, but this time, before she could speak, I took the lead. Sis, what brings you here? Are you feeling any discomfort during your early pregnancy? I've heard that pregnancy can be really tough. How are you feeling? My brother is gone, and there's no one to take care of you. It must be so hard for you, sister-in-law. My tone was sincere, and the expression on my face was even more genuine. Seeing this, Kathy looked somewhat pleased. She touched her still flat stomach and sat down shyly across from me. Megan, your brother is gone, but I'm still carrying his child in my belly. My parents want me to keep the baby, they said. Before she could finish, I interrupted her again. Sis, Mom and Dad have already told me, as long as you're willing to keep the baby, they won't fight you for my brother's insurance compensation. Nor will they contest his inheritance, and all of their assets will be left to you and the child after they pass away. Mom and Dad will do their best to make up for your daily life, and I have no objections to that. Kathy seemed taken aback by how readily I agreed, pausing for a moment before a satisfied expression spread across her face. She was so moved that tears nearly fell. Megan, you're all so good to me. My own parents never treated me this well, marrying into your family. I'm truly so lucky. I also joined in with the business flattery. Sister-in-law, having you marry into our family isn't just my brother's blessing, it's a blessing for our entire Lewis family. If it weren't for you, our Lewis family line would have died out. My compliment pleased Kathy greatly. She now showed no trace of widowhood sorrow, only anticipation for a beautiful future life. However, she still had a bit of worry. With a slight frown and a touch of unease, she asked me, Megan, what if this baby turns out to be a girl? Will Mom and Dad still treat me this way? I chuckled softly, as if she had asked the most foolish question. Sis, Mom and Dad definitely prefer boys, but our situation is different. Whether it's a boy or a girl, the baby in your belly is the only grandchild in our Lewis family. In my parents' eyes, it's more precious than their own eyeballs. Besides, look at me. Have I ever been treated unfairly? I'm a girl too, right? Kathy smiled sheepishly, her expression relaxing even more, with no trace of hesitation left in her tone. You're right, after all, this is Leo Lewis's only child, the only grandchild in your family. How could Mom and Dad possibly fuss over the gender? I nodded in agreement, but just to be safe, I still reminded Kathy, sis, we'll know the baby's gender in a couple of months. If it's a little niece, Mom and Dad might complain a bit at first, but once the baby is born, the bond will grow stronger. That grandparent-grandchild connection is special, but it's probably best not to tell Mom and Dad in advance. I'm worried you might get upset, and I've heard that getting angry during pregnancy isn't good for the baby's health, if the child isn't healthy. My parents would. I left my sentence hanging for her to fill in the blanks. After seeing Kathy off, I went to my parents' house again that evening. Just trying hard isn't enough. My parents are in pretty good spirits. Kathy's pregnancy has kept them from being completely consumed by the grief of losing their son. As soon as I got back, my mom immediately came over and asked, Megan, do you know any doctors who could tell us the baby's gender? I smiled faintly. My parents are quite traditional and favor boys over girls. The reason I've managed to do well in this family is entirely due to my own capabilities. Mom, doctors aren't allowed to reveal the baby's gender these days. Why don't we find a fortune teller to take a look? She was superstitious to begin with, so she agreed without a second thought. As for me, all it took was one red envelope, and the so-called master would say exactly what I wanted him to. The result was that my parents became absolutely convinced that Kathy was carrying their little golden grandson, a boy, but there are risks. Staying closer to the grandparents will ensure a safe birth. My mom couldn't sit still any longer and insisted on bringing Kathy home to take care of her. At first, Kathy repeatedly declined, but after seeing how attentive my mom was to every detail, she finally relaxed and began to enjoy being pampered at our house. Even a glass of water would be handed to her by my parents, and Kathy was extremely satisfied. With daily care and an additional 20,000 yuan in monthly allowance, Kathy was living a very happy life. Even though my parents didn't give her the insurance compensation for my brother, she still firmly believed in their promise. As for my parents, they worked themselves to the bone every day, exhausted but happy. 2 months later, Kathy secretly went to see a doctor and found out she was carrying a girl. Kathy was still a bit worried, but I repeatedly reassured her. After all, she's the only granddaughter in our family, my brother's only flesh and blood. My parents would cherish her beyond measure. As soon as the child is born, she'll instantly win over my parents' hearts. At the same time, I pretended to suggest, if you're truly worried, you could secretly find an excuse to terminate the pregnancy. Although my parents would no longer support you financially, you could find a job, pay the mortgage yourself, and live freely. It would just be a bit more challenging. Well, your marital home should also allocate a quarter to my parents, sister-in-law. Remember to prepare the housing funds early, or with my parents' temper, they'll definitely scratch you up. In contrast, Kathy couldn't bear to part with her current comfortable life, and even less could she come up with the money to cash out for my parents, so, she felt I was right. After all, it's the only flesh and blood of my brother, and so, Kathy continued to enjoy the service from my parents until the child was born. It's a girl. My parents were filled with disappointment but held back from showing it. This won't do, so, I began to perform. I went to the hospital with the little clothes I had bought earlier. And as soon as I saw Kathy, I exclaimed in an exaggerated tone, "Sister-in-law, you've given our Lewis family a precious daughter. You're a great contributor. These are the little clothes I prepared a whole month ago. What do you think? Aren't they adorable?" Kathy smiled and exchanged a few pleasantries with me, but my parents' expressions suddenly turned grim. My dad sprang to his feet, snatched the tiny clothes from me, and glared at me with fury in his eyes. "Megan Lewis, what do you mean you already bought clothes? Aren't these for a girl? You knew all along it was a worthless girl." He didn't hold back at all in front of Kathy and her family, freely venting all the dissatisfaction in his heart. My mother also glared at me angrily. Before I could say anything, Kathy's parents became displeased. "What do you mean by the money-losing goods? Our daughter went through all the hardship to give you a precious daughter, and you're still not happy about it? If it weren't for you shamelessly begging our family back then, I would have made Kathy get an abortion long ago." "Enough, no more talking, it's time to fulfill what was promised back then." With that, Kathy's parents directly handed over a phone containing a pre-recorded video. In the video, my parents could be heard making one guarantee after another. "Kathy has given birth. We'll book the best postpartum care center for her. After the postpartum period, we'll hire a nanny to take care of things so she won't be tired at all. As long as my precious grandchild is born, I'll give all of Leo Lewis's insurance compensation to the mother and child, 20,000 a month for pocket money. Kathy can spend it however she wants. Later, the big house we live in will be left to them, mother and child." My parents, hearing the voice coming from the phone, looked extremely upset. At that moment, I exclaimed beside them, "This video is fake, isn't it?" Kathy and her parents immediately took offense, their eyes widening as they shouted at me, "That's bullshit, so many people were watching. Your parents said it themselves, how could it possibly be fake?" Kathy also glared at me angrily. "Megan Lewis, what do you mean by that? Didn't I confirm with you back then? You said you wouldn't fight me for it. What, are you trying to go back on your word now, bullying us? A widow and her orphan child, the child is still a Lewis by blood. Are you even human?" I still refused to believe it and questioned loudly, "Impossible, my parents would never make such a promise." "Sis, what you told me was that mom and dad would subsidize your living expenses and leave all their property to you and your daughter. I have no problem with that, but the house they're living in now was bought by me, it's under my name, and I'm still paying off the mortgage. They can't dispose of it at all. Besides, mom and dad's combined monthly pension is only a little over 2,000 yuan, even if they have savings, plus my brother's insurance compensation of 200,000 yuan, how much could that possibly add up to? How could they possibly give you 20,000 yuan in monthly allowance and also pay for a nanny for you?" My parents know their financial situation perfectly well. they would never make such empty promises. After saying that, I deliberately turned to look at my parents. Mom, Dad, am I right? The hospital room fell silent. Even if Kathy's family were slow to react or not the sharpest, they finally understood. From the very beginning, my parents had intended to trick them into having the child. They were just painting a rosy picture from the start. Kathy had just given birth and was still very weak. She couldn't handle such a shock. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. The hospital room immediately descended into chaos. Seeing this, my parents seized the opportunity to slip away. Of course, I wasn't going to stay either, although I really wanted to see Kathy's miserable state. Her family was all there, and I was afraid of getting the short end of the stick. It was better to make a quick escape, but just as I stepped out of the hospital entrance, my parents called out to stop me. Megan Lewis, be honest, when exactly did you find out that Kathy is carrying a worthless burden in her belly? Both of them glared at me angrily. I frowned and said, Mom, Dad, why do you have to use such harsh words? I'm a girl too. Does that make me a worthless burden as well? Their tone immediately softened. Megan, that's not what Mom and Dad meant. You're so capable. How could other girls compare to you? Besides, your brother only has this one child. That's why Mom and Dad are reacting so strongly. They don't dare say such things to me only because they're relying on me for their retirement. I thought back to the unfair treatment I endured as a child and my tragic death in my past life, feeling chills running down my spine. When I was a child, I wasn't treated very well by my parents, but with my older brother around, a son in the family, they weren't too harsh on me, and my relationship with my brother was pretty good too. So in my previous life, I never would have imagined that, for the sake of a grandson who might not even exist, my own parents would be so cruel as to want me dead. When exactly did you find out? My parents asked me with displeasure. I said absent-mindedly, about 5 months ago. As soon as the words left my mouth, I clearly saw the anger bursting forth on their faces. I nodded with satisfaction and continued to add fuel to the fire. Mom, Dad, you've taken such good care of my sister-in-law. My little niece is so fair and chubby. Don't you just adore her? Their faces grew even angrier. I thought, the Kathy family must be just as furious as them. Now both families are like lit sticks of dynamite. If they collide, wouldn't they be blown to smithereens? How exciting. Soon enough, Kathy's family came knocking at our door, demanding that my parents honor the initial promise. My parents, hopping mad, started cursing. You had the nerve to come asking for money after giving birth to a worthless girl. Our Lewis family line has been cut off by that deadbeat daughter of yours in her belly, and I haven't even demanded compensation from you yet. You knew full well you were carrying a worthless girl, yet you still scammed us for food and drink. I've been waiting on you hand and foot every day until my back aches. What a shameless little slut. Kathy's family was also enraged. Isn't this granddaughter also a Lewis? Everyone, come and judge for yourselves. This family must have committed some sin. They had a short-lived son who left my daughter a young widow, then tricked her into giving birth to his posthumous child. Now just because it's a girl, they want nothing to do with her. Yesterday at the hospital, my daughter was so angry she fainted. What kind of parents are they in this world? No wonder their son died young. He was repaying his parents' debts. My parents were trembling with rage, utterly humiliated by the neighbors' pointing fingers and gossip. They pointed at Kathy's parents and threatened, my son's inheritance includes a share for us. His elderly parents, then they called me, asking me to contact a lawyer for them to prepare to fight for the property. I rushed over and tried to reason with Kathy's parents in front of them. Mom, Dad, after all, the child is my brother's flesh and blood. Why don't we just let it go? It's not like I can't support the two of you. Why go through the trouble of fighting with my sister-in-law over the house? How difficult must it be for her to raise the child alone? My dad really took the bait and immediately snapped back at me. Megan Lewis, since you're so generous, why don't you just give your money to that little bitch? It's easy to be generous with other people's money. Do you think it's easy for your mother and me to save up for our retirement? Feeling deeply wronged, I took out the IOU my brother had written me when he bought his house. Dad, how can you say that to me? When my brother bought his house, he borrowed $500,000 from me and even wrote an IOU. I wasn't planning on asking for that money back either. My sister-in-law has it tough. After all, the child is part of our family. Consider this as child support. People around praised my actions a few times, and Kathy's family started looking at me more favorably. But my mother snatched the IOU and said fiercely, why shouldn't we take it? If you have spare money, why not use it to be filial to your own parents? Why give it to an outsider? I'm telling you, Megan Lewis. If you dare give money to this kind of loose woman, I'll jump off the building. I'm your biological mother. If you have the nerve, go ahead and drive me to my death. Every single word was exactly what I wanted to hear. I had no choice but to file a lawsuit with my mother. She sought to recover my brother's inheritance. While I pursued the repayment of my loan, Kathy's parents came and made a scene, not only gaining nothing but also losing a considerable amount in the process. They were even more furious about Kathy's insistence on giving birth to the child, and in their anger, they returned to their hometown. Before leaving, they left Kathy with harsh words. If I told you not to have the baby and you insisted, now you can deal with the consequences yourself. Kathy also has a younger brother. Her parents are the type who favor sons over daughters. The only reason they stood up for Kathy was because they wanted a share of the money. As soon as they realized there was nothing to gain, they slipped away faster than anyone. The reason they didn't support Kathy having the child was also because an unmarried, childless Kathy would be easier to marry off, allowing them to receive another bride price. Kathy had completely lost all hope, not even taking proper care of herself during her postpartum confinement. Of course, I had to offer help in her time of need, bringing baby formula, diapers, and other supplies to visit her. Sister-in-law, I never imagined my parents could be so heartless and ungrateful. Now I don't dare do anything, or else my mother will threaten to jump off a building. I can't be the one to push her to her death. This is $5,000, take it for now. If my parents aren't around, I can still look after you. Soon, Kathy received a court summons. My mother was demanding a division of property, and I was demanding the repayment of the loan. My explanation for this remains the same. I had no choice, sis. If I didn't do this, my mom was going to jump off a building. Don't worry, I'm just going through the motions. I would never actually take this money. After saying that, afraid she wouldn't believe me, I secretly slipped her a 5,000 yuan red envelope. The court proceedings moved at a steady pace, and by the time the verdict came down, several months had already passed. My parents were allocated less than 1/6 of the inheritance, which amounted to just over 100,000 yuan in cash, but Kathy still couldn't come up with the money. After getting pregnant, she had long since quit her job. The monthly expenses of raising a child and the mortgage were already suffocating her. My parents directly applied for compulsory enforcement, and Kathy's only home became a foreclosed property. Property prices were in a downturn, and the market was poor. After paying off the remaining mortgage with the proceeds from the auction, there wasn't even enough to cover the division of my parents' inheritance. She ended up completely homeless, and even so, my mother still wouldn't let her off. He became a person with bad credit, with a child to take care of, and couldn't find a job. Seems pretty miserable, to be honest. I really have a headache over this. Worrying about what will happen to my little niece in the future. After all, my brother and I have a decent relationship, but my experience from my past life, where meddling in others' affairs led to a terrible death, has made me hesitate to make a decision, and the unexpected change came at this moment. Kathy had nothing and was raising a child alone. Life had become so difficult that she could barely afford 3 meals a day. Finally, she went to my parents and tried to dump the child on them. This is your family's child. You tricked me into giving birth to him. If you won't take responsibility, who will? And my parents absolutely refused to accept the child. Just as both sides were pulling and tugging, the child was somehow thrown to the ground and died on the spot. Kathy seemed to have gone mad, actually laughing out loud. You threw my daughter to her death. You threw your own granddaughter to her death. Give me money, or I'll sue you in court. You'll go to jail. Hurry up and give me the money. If you pay me, I'll say it was an accident. If you don't, I'll sue you and make sure you rot in prison. My parents were terrified and rushed forward, trying to cover Kathy's mouth to stop her from shouting. Kathy struggled desperately, fighting with all her might. Gradually, there was no more movement. After a long while, my parents finally noticed that Kathy had stopped responding. My mother was so frightened that she collapsed to the floor. While my father looked around in confusion, what do we do? What should we do? They seemed to be asking each other, and also themselves. In the end, they decided to hide the truth, but had no idea how to actually do it. What they didn't know was that I had witnessed everything through the camera I had secretly installed. I took out my phone, my voice filled with panic. Hello, is this 911? My parents have gone crazy. I saw them beating my sister-in-law on the security camera. Officers, please go check quickly. My sister-in-law isn't moving anymore. The address. Oh, the address is. I was like someone who had been scared out of their wits. My words jumbled. my logic unclear, all mixed up and confused, but in such a situation, isn't that a normal reaction? Later, my parents were taken away by the police, and Kathy and the child's bodies were handed over to the family for identification. I only took the child's body, no one cared about Kathy's corpse. The police officer's sharp gaze swept over me. Do you hold a grudge against your sister-in-law? I nodded without hesitation. I've watched that surveillance footage over and over again. Kathy deliberately threw my little niece out. How could a mother have such a cruel heart? I've been supporting both mother and daughter financially every month. How could she kill her own biological daughter? My heart ached unbearably, and the police officer sighed. I chose a nice burial plot for that child, hoping she would be reborn into a better life and find a good mother. Later, Kathy's parents found me and said if I paid them, they would write a letter of forgiveness for my parents, which might save their lives. When I visited my parents in prison, I told them the news, and their faces filled with hope. I refused. As soon as the words were spoken, the hope and excitement on their faces shattered in an instant. Both of them reacted the same way, shouting and asking me why. Looking at the two of them, I was reminded of my past life. Back then, I had been just as confused. As for that question, they can go ask the king of hell themselves. They were both sentenced to death, and I refused the family visitation before the execution. If they hadn't deceived Kathy into giving birth to the child, if they hadn't been so heartless and favored boys over girls, none of this would have happened. My little niece was still so young. She didn't even have the chance to see the world properly. How could they be so cruel? Officer, is it really so hard to understand that I don't want to see them? The police officer on the other end of the phone silently hung up. I lifted my head and looked out the window. Since my rebirth, this was the first time I had looked at the sun. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.